My husband faked a family emergency to steal my savings, then used the money to take his mistress shopping while texting me, "Stop asking questions and be a good wife for once." When I cried, he told my son I was crazy and hid my car keys. He thought he had me cornered until a woman in a gray suit knocked at noon because he sent me the text at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning while I was standing in the cereal aisle at Kroger, and I read it so many times the words stopped making sense. Stop asking questions and be a good wife for once. I had asked him where the $14,200 went. That was the question. $14,200 that had been sitting in our joint savings account, the account I had been feeding for 3 years out of my freelance income, $300 here, $500 there, sometimes $1,100 in a good month, and it was gone in 2 transfers on a Friday afternoon. He told me his mother needed emergency surgery. He told me it was her gallbladder and she was scared and the hospital in Baton Rouge needed a deposit before they'd schedule the procedure, and could I please not make this about money right now because his mother was sick. I wired it. Both transfers. I sat in our kitchen and I wired it to the account number he texted me, and then I called his mother to see if she needed me to drive down, and she picked up on the second ring, confused, healthy, eating a sandwich. She didn't know anything about any surgery. I called him and he didn't pick up. I texted him and he sent back that response about being a good wife. I was still standing in the cereal aisle when my hands started shaking. A woman with a cart full of Gatorade almost ran into me and said sorry. And I couldn't say anything back because my throat had closed entirely. When I got home, my son Colby was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. He's 12. He looked up at me and said, "Dad called. He said you've been acting weird and not to worry about it." I sat down on the floor. Not in a chair. On the floor, with my back against the refrigerator, because my legs just stopped working. And Colby looked at me with this expression that broke me in half, not scared, not confused, just tired in a way a 12-year-old shouldn't know how to look, and he said, "Are you okay, Mom?" I said I was fine. That night my husband Reg came home at 9:30 smelling like a restaurant I've never been to, some kind of cedar and citrus cologne that wasn't his, carrying nothing, explaining nothing. He walked past me into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and said, "My mom's doing better. Thanks for handling that." I said, "Your mother didn't have surgery, Reg." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Jasper, need to stop this." Stop what? This. Whatever this is. Jasper going to upset Colby. I told him I wanted to see the hospital receipt. I told him I wanted to see the account the money went to, the name on it, something. He put the glass down on the counter very carefully, like he was controlling himself, and he said, "I'm not doing this with you tonight. Jasper want to act crazy, do it when our son's not in the next room." He went upstairs. I heard him lock the bedroom door. This wasn't new. I want to be clear about that. This wasn't the first time Reg had done something and then looked at me like I was the problem for noticing. 2 years ago he spent $3,400 on a weekend I didn't know about. He said it was a fishing trip with his friend Polly. I found a hotel confirmation in his jacket pocket, 1 room, checked in on a Friday, checked out Sunday, and when I asked him about it he said Polly had brought a woman and they'd all shared the suite to save money. He said it so easily. He said it looking right at me, no hesitation, like the story had been sitting ready in his mouth. I wanted to push harder. I didn't. Colby was 7 and Reg had just gotten a promotion, and I told myself I needed more than a hotel receipt before I blew everything up. The year before that, I caught him deleting messages on his phone, not hiding the phone, just standing in the living room deleting them one by one, quickly, right in front of me, because he knew I wouldn't say anything. I asked who he was texting and he said, "Work stuff," and changed the channel. I stood there for probably 45 seconds deciding whether to push it, and then I went to do the dishes because that felt safer. And 8 months ago, he told me I should stop doing freelance work because it made me distracted and irritable, and the house was suffering. I was making between $2,000 and $3,500 a month doing content writing from home. I managed the household, got Colby to school, cooked 4 nights a week. He wanted me to stop because I was distracted. I cut back. I cut my income by almost half because he said it made me irritable. I shrank myself down and handed him the extra space and said nothing. That Tuesday night, after he locked the bedroom door, I went looking for my car keys because I needed to get out of the house. They weren't on the hook by the door. They weren't in my purse. They weren't in my coat pocket. I looked for 40 minutes. I checked every flat surface in the kitchen, the bathroom counter, the windowsill. They were gone. I knocked on the bedroom door and asked him where my keys were. He said, through the door, "I don't know what you did with your keys." I stood in the hallway of my own house at 11:15 at night with nowhere to go. The next morning I borrowed Colby's iPad while Reg was in the shower and I pulled up the bank's transfer history. The transfers had gone to an account under the name Simone V. I didn't know a Simone. I took a screenshot with my phone before Reg came downstairs. Then I went to the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub. And I looked at that screenshot for a long time. I am not going to tell you I immediately became someone strong and decisive. I sat there for probably 20 minutes and I cried and then I stopped crying and then I cried again. What I felt was not rage yet. What I felt was the specific shame of realizing you've been managed. That all the moments I'd talked myself out of asking questions, all the moments I'd chosen the dishes over the confrontation, those hadn't been me being reasonable. Those had been him training me. He had trained me to be easier to steal from. I got up. I opened my laptop. I emailed my friend Constance, who is a paralegal and who has hated Reg for 2 years without ever fully telling me why. I told her everything. The transfers, his mother's non-surgery, the keys, the text. I attached the screenshot of the transfer too. Simone V. She called me back in 11 minutes. "Don't touch anything in that account," she said. "Don't move money, don't close it, don't do anything. And call Delphine." Delphine was a family law attorney whose name Constance had apparently been keeping in her phone for exactly this kind of call. I didn't know that. I called her. I told Delphine everything. She asked me a lot of questions in a very flat, calm voice, and then she said, "Do you have access to bank statements going back 12 months? I did. I had the login. "Screenshot everything," she said. "Every transfer, every withdrawal, every balance. Don't move funds. Don't confront him yet. Can you do that?" I said yes. "I'll need to see those documents. I can be at your home Thursday at noon if that works. I wear a gray suit, so you'll know it's me when I knock." I said Thursday at noon was fine. Reg came home Wednesday evening with a shopping bag from Nordstrom that he carried straight upstairs. He didn't mention it. I didn't ask. I watched him go up the stairs and I kept my face completely neutral and I thought about the 12 months of bank statements I'd spent Tuesday night pulling and saving to a folder on my laptop, the folder I'd hidden inside another folder and named Colby School Docs. There were 9 transfers to Simone V over 14 months. Total, $31,840. Not $14,000. $31,840. I had been so focused on the most recent one that I hadn't gone back far enough. Constance had. She'd gone back and found the pattern, small ones first, $600, $850, $1,200, spaced out so they didn't trigger any alerts, then bigger as he got more comfortable, then the $14,200 in 2 shots because by then he knew I wouldn't look. I sat at the kitchen table Wednesday night while Reg watched television in the other room. And I made a list of everything I knew on a piece of paper. Then I took a picture of the list and emailed it to Delphine and threw the paper in the trash outside. At 11:52 Wednesday night, Reg got a text that made him laugh out loud, that specific low laugh he does when something genuinely surprises him, and he didn't show me what it was, just tilted the phone away and smiled at the screen, and I watched his face and thought, there you are. That's her. That's Simone. He went to bed at midnight. I lay next to him in the dark and I did not sleep. At 11:58 Thursday morning, Reg was still home. I hadn't expected that. He usually left by 9. But he'd decided to work from home, set up at the kitchen table with his laptop, and now I had 2 minutes before Delphine knocked and my husband was 15 feet from the front door. I went to the kitchen and I said, very carefully, "Can you take Colby to his orthodontist appointment? It's at 12:15. Reg looked up. "I thought you were taking him." "I can't. I have a call." He looked annoyed. He looked at his screen, then at me. "Jasper could have told me this morning." "I know. I'm sorry." I forgot. He closed the laptop slowly, the way he does when he wants you to know you're inconveniencing him. He went upstairs to tell Colby to get his shoes. I stood at the kitchen window and watched the street. At noon exactly, a woman in a gray suit came up the front walk carrying a leather portfolio. Reg came downstairs with Colby right as I opened the door. He stopped on the third step. I said, "Delphine, come in." Delphine stepped inside. She was maybe 50, close-cropped hair, the kind of face that doesn't waste expressions. She looked at Reg the way you'd look at a piece of furniture you're about to move. Reg looked at the portfolio. He looked at the suit. He said, slowly, "Who is this?" I said, "This is my attorney." The color didn't drain from his face all at once. It went in patches. His jaw first, then his forehead, and he stood on the third step holding his keys and looking at Delphine's portfolio like he could read through the leather. Colby said, "Dad, we're gonna be late." Reg said, "Give me a second." Colby went to the door. I kissed him on the head and said I'd pick him up after, and he went out to the car. Reg had not moved from the third step. I said, "Jasper should go. He can't be late." Reg came down the last 3 steps. He looked at me and his voice had dropped, gone tight and careful. "What is this?" "I'll explain when you get back." "Jasper'll explain right now." Delphine said, pleasantly, "Mr. Reg, your son is in the car. We can wait." He looked at her like she'd said something in a foreign language. Then he looked at me and I watched him calculate. He couldn't make a scene in front of an attorney with a portfolio who already knew his name. He knew that. He was smart enough to know that. He left. Delphine and I sat at the kitchen table and she laid out papers in a very specific order and we went through everything. By the time Reg's car pulled back into the driveway 45 minutes later, the dining room table had a printed copy of 14 months of bank statements with every Simone V. transfer highlighted in yellow, a printed record of the hotel receipts Constance had helped me pull from a shared credit card account I'd barely looked at, and 3 photographs that Constance had found on a public Instagram account, Simone's account, which was public, that showed her in a Nordstrom fitting room in November, December, and 2 weeks ago, in clothes I now had receipts for, tagged with a location 15 minutes from our house. One of the photos had Reg's hand in it. His left hand, with his wedding ring, holding up a dress for her to look at. Reg walked into the kitchen and stopped when he saw the table. He said, "What is all this?" I said, "Sit down, Reg." He didn't sit. He looked at the papers and I watched him trying to read them upside down, his eyes moving fast, and then he saw the highlighted transfers and something happened in his shoulders. They went up first and then dropped, like something had been cut. He said, "I can explain the transfers." Delphine said, "Jasper, welcome to." He looked at her. He looked at me. "This isn't, you're taking this out of context." I said, "What's the context?" She works for me. She does contract work. Those were payments for services." I slid the Nordstrom photo across the table. His hand. The wedding ring. The dress. He said, "That's not what that looks like." I said, "Jasper told me your mother needed emergency surgery." She did. It was a different kind of situation then. Jasper told me to stop asking questions and be a good wife for once. He stopped. "Those are your words," I said. "That's the text." Delphine has a copy. Delphine turned over a page and there it was, printed out, timestamped, his number at the top. Reg put his hand on the back of the kitchen chair. His knuckles were white. "This is, you went to an attorney without even talking to me first?" "Without giving me a chance to." Jasper hid my car keys. "I didn't. Where are my car keys, Reg?" His mouth opened. Closed. He looked at the table again. "Jasper took my keys so I couldn't leave," I said. "Jasper told my 12-year-old son I was acting crazy so he'd doubt me instead of listen to me. Jasper stole $31,000 from our savings over 14 months and you took her shopping with it and you came home and you acted like I was the problem for noticing." 31, he said it like he hadn't heard the number right. $31,840, Delphine said. "We've itemized it." He stood there. His face had gone the color of old chalk. He was still holding his car keys in his right hand and I could see his fingers moving against them, pressing the metal, like he needed something to grip. He said, you're not being fair. Fair, I said. I made mistakes. Okay. I made mistakes and I'm willing to talk about that, I'm willing to work on this, but bringing a lawyer into our home without even, Jasper told me to be a good wife for once, I said. So I was. I got organized. Delphine slid the petition across the table. Reg looked at it for a long time without touching it. I watched him read the first paragraph. I watched him read it a second time. His lips were moving slightly. He said, Jasper can't, you're not actually doing this. I filed yesterday morning, Delphine said. Jasper V. been served, technically, though we chose to do it this way for the sake of your son. You're trying to destroy our family over $31,000, I said. And 14 months. And your mother's fake surgery. And my car keys. He set his own keys down on the table. Very gently. Like he was putting down something he didn't trust himself with. Then he said, very quietly, what am I supposed to do now? It wasn't a real question. It was the sound of someone who had never once planned for the possibility that this moment would come, because they had never believed it would. I said, Jasper can start by telling me where my car keys are. He went to his jacket hanging by the door. He reached into the inside pocket and he put my keys on the counter without looking at me. They'd been in his jacket the whole time. 12 feet from the hook where they were supposed to be. Constance had been in the Facebook group for our neighborhood, the one with 1,400 members where people post about lost dogs and suspicious cars, since the previous spring. I hadn't asked her to do anything with it. But on Thursday afternoon, while Reg was at his brother's house trying to figure out what to do next, she posted in the group. Not anything mean. Not anything legally complicated. Just a screenshot of his text to me, the one about being a good wife for once, with a note that said she was posting on behalf of a neighbor who was going through something hard and needed people to know what had happened. She tagged it with the neighborhood name and left it up. By Friday morning it had 340 comments. By Friday afternoon, Reg's brother called me. He said Reg was a mess and asked if there was anything that could be done. I said I didn't know what he meant by that. He said, to stop all this. I said there wasn't. Reg's boss, they worked in the same industry, overlapping circles, saw the post because his wife was in the neighborhood group. He didn't fire Reg. But he did send him a very careful email, which Reg apparently forwarded to Constance by accident while trying to forward it to his brother, and which Constance sent to me. It said that in light of recent developments, there would need to be a conversation about Reg's role in any client-facing work going forward. Simone deleted her Instagram account Saturday morning. The public one with the Nordstrom photos. Gone. I had screenshots of everything but the deletion was its own kind of message, she knew. She'd seen something or he'd called her and she'd pulled everything down and gone quiet. Reg came back to the house Saturday afternoon to get clothes. He had his brother with him. He didn't speak to me. He went upstairs, packed 2 bags, and when he came back down he stopped in the kitchen doorway and looked at me like he was going to say something significant. He said, I never thought you'd actually do this. I said, I know. He looked at me for another second. His brother was by the front door looking at his shoes. Reg said, I didn't think you had it in you. I let that sit for a moment. Then I said, I know you didn't. That's why you hid my keys instead of having a conversation. He left. Colby asked me that night if Dad was coming back. I told him I didn't know yet, which was honest. He nodded. He said, the kids at school are saying stuff. I asked what kind of stuff. He said his friend's mom had seen something online. I said I was sorry he had to deal with that. He said, is it true? What happened? I said yes. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I knew you weren't crazy. I didn't say anything. I just put my hand on his arm. Monday morning I went to the bank and had my name removed from the joint account and opened a separate one. The joint account had $340 in it. Reg had moved the rest, what little was left, over the weekend, which Delphine had told me he might try to do, and which she had already filed an emergency motion about on Friday. He moved $340 like it was a strategy. The attorney's fees for the divorce were going to hurt. But Delphine had already sent a demand letter for the $31,840 as dissipation of marital assets, and she was confident. Her word, confident. The neighborhood Facebook post was still up Monday. Constance hadn't taken it down. People were still commenting. Some of them I knew. Some of them I didn't. One woman I'd never met wrote, "I went to school with him." This tracks completely. That one got 47 likes. Reg asked Constance through a mutual friend to take the post down. Constance said she'd think about it. She didn't take it down. His mother called me Wednesday. The one without the gallbladder surgery. She said she didn't know what to say. I said she didn't have to say anything. She said, "He's my son, but what he did was ugly." I said I agreed. She said she hoped Colby wouldn't suffer. I said I was working on that. She didn't call Reg back that day. He told me this later, indirectly, through something Colby mentioned, that Dad had been trying to reach Grandma and she wasn't picking up. The woman who had $31,840 worth of his money and his attention deleted her public account and went silent. His boss was watching him. His mother wasn't answering. The neighborhood knew. His own kid had looked at me and said he knew I wasn't crazy. Reg sent me a text Friday of the following week. Just one line. "I hope you're happy." I didn't respond. My keys were on the hook by the door where they belonged.